The cowboy who saved the monster and showed the town what humanity really means. In the middle of the wide open plains, there was a small town that seemed almost forgotten by time. The buildings were dusty and worn, with wooden porches that creaked in the wind and narrow streets that were rarely crowded. Life in the town was quiet and slow, but it was not easy. The sun beat down mercilessly during the day, and nights were often cold and lonely. People lived simple lives, working hard to take care of their families and survive in a land that could be both beautiful and unforgiving. But the town was not only shaped by the harshness of nature, it was also shaped by fear. The people whispered stories about a strange creature that lived near the old canyon on the edge of the town. They said it was enormous, with sharp claws and glowing eyes, a monster that had torn down fences, eaten livestock, and vanished before anyone could get close. Children were warned never to go near the canyon, and adults avoided it as if a dark shadow hung over the area. The fear of the unknown had grown so strong that it became a part of everyday life. The creature, they said, was dangerous, wild, and something no one could ever understand. The stories were passed from neighbor to neighbor, and every new tale made the monster sound even more frightening. Some claimed it could move faster than a horse. Others swore it had teeth as big as a man's hand. Every sighting was exaggerated, every rumor more terrifying than the last. People's fear had become almost a living thing, growing larger and darker with each retelling. It controlled how they lived, what they said, and even how they thought. For many, the canyon was a place of mystery and danger, a place where curiosity could get you hurt, or worse. Amid all this fear, there was one man who looked at the world differently. His name was Jack, and he lived alone on a small ranch near the outskirts of town. Jack was a cowboy, tall and strong, with weathered hands from years of working with horses and cattle. He had a calm and steady way about him, a quiet confidence that came from experience and a deep understanding of animals. Unlike most people in the town, he did not let fear guide his actions. While others whispered and ran from the unknown, Jack observed and thought. He believed that every problem had a reason, and that every creature, no matter how strange it appeared, deserved understanding. Jack's home was simple. A small wooden cabin stood near the edge of his property, surrounded by open fields where horses grazed freely. He had a few cows, some chickens, and a loyal dog named Rusty who never left his side. Life for Jack was not easy, but he enjoyed the freedom of the plains, the quiet of the mornings, and the feeling of the wind as he rode his horse across the open land. He had few visitors, and the townspeople often called him a loner, but Jack did not mind. He preferred to spend his time in the open air, thinking, observing, and caring for the animals he loved. One evening, as the sun began to sink behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red, Jack stood on a small hill near his cabin. He looked toward the old canyon, the place the townspeople feared most. The canyon was dark and mysterious, its cliffs rising sharply from the plains, casting long shadows over the land below. Even from a distance, Jack could see the signs of the creature the town had been talking about. Broken branches, deep tracks in the dirt, and the remains of livestock scattered near the rocks. But rather than feeling fear, Jack felt curiosity. He had spent many hours watching the canyon from afar. He had seen movement, heard strange noises, and noticed patterns that others ignored. He could tell the difference between a coyote and something much larger. He knew that fear often made people exaggerate what they saw, turning shadows into monsters. And he suspected that the so-called monster was not what the town imagined. Perhaps it was hurt, lost, or misunderstood. Perhaps it was only defending itself. These thoughts kept Jack awake at night, thinking about what he might find if he dared to go closer. Despite the warnings, Jack decided that he could not ignore the truth any longer. He prepared his horse, saddled Rusty, and packed a small bag with food, water, and some tools he might need. His neighbors shook their heads when they saw him leave, calling him reckless and foolish. They warned him that the monster could kill him, that he was putting himself in danger, and that he should stay safe in town. But Jack did not listen to their warnings. He trusted his instincts, his knowledge of animals, and his understanding of the land. He believed that to truly know the world, one must face it with courage, not fear. As Jack rode toward the canyon, the wind whispered through the tall grass, and the sky turned a deep shade of purple. Rusty trotted faithfully beside him, ears perked, alert to every sound. The journey was not easy. The ground grew rougher, the paths narrower, and the shadows darker. Jack's heart remained steady, but he felt the tension of the unknown pressing against him. Every step brought new signs: trees that had been scratched, footprints that seemed too large to be human, and the occasional low growl that echoed through the cliffs. Jack studied each clue carefully, trying to understand what had happened here, what the creature was like, and what it wanted. Hours passed and Jack found himself in a part of the canyon he had never seen before. The walls rose high, casting deep shadows, and a cold breeze swept through the rocks. Here, the signs of the creature were clearer. There were broken branches, flattened grass, and a trap, old, rusted, and cruelly designed to catch anything that wandered too close. Jack approached slowly, his eyes scanning for movement. That was when he saw it. A glimpse of fur, a large shape, eyes glowing with fear and pain. The creature was trapped, struggling against the ropes that held it, unable to free itself. Jack dismounted, moving carefully so as not to scare the creature further. Rusty stayed close but did not bark, sensing his master's intention. Jack spoke softly, in a calm and gentle voice, trying to reassure the frightened animal. He could see now that the creature was enormous, much larger than a horse, with thick fur and strong limbs, but it was not aggressive. It was scared, confused, and hurt. Jack knew in that moment that the town had been wrong. This was not a monster. It was a living being suffering in pain, and it needed help. He knelt beside the trap, studying it carefully. He had to act quickly, but also with caution. One wrong move, and the creature might panic, hurt itself, or lash out in fear. Jack's hands were steady as he worked to loosen the ropes, speaking in a soft tone, his eyes meeting the creature's to show he meant no harm. Minutes felt like hours, but finally, with a careful tug and a push, the trap gave way. The creature stumbled free, shaking its massive body, and looked at Jack with a mixture of fear and curiosity. For a long moment, neither moved. Jack stayed still, letting the creature understand that it was safe. Rusty sat quietly, observing. Then, slowly, the creature inched closer, sniffing the cowboy's hands, and finally allowed him to touch it. Jack could feel its strength, its power, but also its gentle nature. He knew that this moment was just the beginning of something extraordinary, not just a bond between man and creature, but the chance to show the town that fear could blind them to truth, and that courage and compassion could reveal a deeper understanding of the world. As night fell, Jack led the creature to a small, safe spot in the canyon where it could rest. He gave it food, water, and quiet company, knowing that this was only the first step in a journey that would challenge the town, change the way people saw the unknown, and reveal the true meaning of humanity. That night, under a sky filled with stars, the quiet cowboy and the so-called monster shared a moment of trust and understanding. In the darkness, fear began to fade, replaced by curiosity, respect, and hope. Jack knew the journey ahead would not be easy. The town might never understand at first. People's fear was powerful. But he also knew that every great change began with a single act of courage, a single choice to do what is right, even when it is difficult. And Jack was ready to face whatever came next. The night air in the canyon was cool, carrying the faint smell of earth and dry grass. Jack sat quietly beside the massive creature he had freed from the trap. Its breathing was heavy and uneven, each exhale puffing small clouds into the chilly air. Rusty, his loyal dog, lay at Jack's feet, ears twitching at every sound. Jack could feel the creature's tension, the way it flinched at every shadow, every rustle. But he also felt its intelligence, its awareness, and the flicker of trust slowly forming between them. This was not a mindless beast. It was a living, thinking, feeling being, just like any human or animal Jack had known. Jack had learned patience over the years. Cowboys often needed patience with wild horses or stubborn cattle. But this was different. This creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes were large, glowing faintly in the moonlight, and they followed Jack's every movement. Its fur was thick and matted in some places, yet soft in others. There were scars along its legs, evidence of past struggles, probably from traps like the one Jack had just freed it from. Each detail told a story, a history of survival in a world that did not understand it. For a while, neither Jack nor the creature moved. He sat cross-legged on the ground, quietly observing, waiting for the moment when the creature would feel safe enough to come closer. Rusty gave a soft whine, sensing the creature's confusion, but Jack reached down and patted the dog's head. "It's all right, Rusty," he whispered. "We're not here to hurt it." The creature tilted its massive head slightly, ears flicking as it listened, curious but wary. Jack knew that trust could not be forced. It had to be earned, step by step. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small bundle of food he had brought. He placed it gently on the ground, a safe distance away from the creature, and stepped back. The creature sniffed the air, its nose twitching. Hunger was clear in its eyes, but so was caution. Slowly, it stepped toward the food, each movement careful, deliberate. Jack watched closely, ready to react if the creature became frightened. But it did not. It ate quietly, its eyes never leaving Jack. That was when he realized something important. Fear could keep people apart, but understanding and care could bring them together. The night passed slowly, with Jack keeping watch over the creature. He spoke softly to it, telling stories about the town, about the plains, and about his life. He spoke not to expect a response, but to calm the creature's nerves and to let it know that he meant no harm. By the first light of dawn, the creature had moved closer, resting its massive head on the ground near Jack's feet. He reached out a hand, and this time it allowed him to touch its fur. A shiver ran through its body, but it did not move away. Jack smiled, feeling a connection form between them, a silent agreement of trust and understanding. Jack knew that this was only the beginning. He could not stay in the canyon forever, and he could not hide the creature from the town indefinitely. People would notice its absence, and rumors would spread even faster than before. But he also knew that the creature needed protection, especially in the first days after being freed. It was vulnerable, and the world outside the canyon could be harsh and cruel. Jack decided he would spend the next few days helping it recover, teaching it that humans could be kind, and showing it that not all encounters needed to end in pain or fear. As the sun climbed higher, painting the canyon walls in shades of gold and red, Jack carefully led the creature to a small area that was sheltered from the wind. He had gathered branches and rocks to create a safe space where it could rest and feel secure. He brought water in a large container and watched as the creature lapped it up, grateful and cautious. Jack talked to it all the while, his voice calm and steady. "You're safe now," he said. "No one's going to hurt you. I'll make sure of it." The creature seemed to understand, blinking slowly, its eyes softening as it looked at him.
During the day, Jack observed the creature closely.
He noticed how it moved, how it used its strong legs to balance on the rocky terrain, how it sniffed the air to understand its surroundings. He could see signs of past struggles, scratches, scars, and patches of fur missing from old injuries. But he also saw signs of strength, resilience, and intelligence. This was no mindless beast. It was a survivor, capable of learning, feeling, and forming bonds. Jack felt a deep respect for it, a recognition that every creature had a story and that understanding came from attention and care, not fear. By late afternoon, Jack decided to explore a little further into the canyon, carefully leading the creature behind him. He wanted to make sure there were no other dangers, old traps, wild predators, or hazards that could harm it. The journey was slow. The creature followed cautiously, sometimes stopping to sniff the ground, sometimes pausing to watch Jack. Rusty ran ahead, curious but careful, and Jack kept his eyes on both animals, making sure they were safe. The canyon was full of shadows and unexpected sounds, but Jack's steady presence reassured the creature. As they moved deeper, Jack noticed signs of other people's fear. Broken fences, makeshift barriers, and warnings scratched into trees told a story of panic and misunderstanding. Someone, or many people, had tried to keep the creature out, believing it was dangerous. Jack felt a pang of sadness. Fear had created this situation, turning people away from the truth, preventing them from seeing what really was. But he also felt determination. If the town could see what he saw, the intelligence, the gentleness, the struggle for survival, they might learn a lesson about courage, empathy, and humanity. As night fell again, Jack and the creature returned to the small, safe area he had prepared. He lit a small lantern, just enough to see, and shared more food. The creature ate slowly, still cautious but calmer than the night before. Jack spoke gently, telling stories of his childhood, of his first horse, of lessons he had learned about trust and patience. The creature listened in its way, eyes following him, occasionally lifting its massive head to watch his movements. Rusty curled up beside Jack, and the canyon was filled with quiet, a peaceful contrast to the fear-filled stories that had surrounded the place for so long. That night, as Jack lay beside the creature to keep it warm, he thought about the town. He knew that people would react with fear, anger, and disbelief if they ever saw the creature. He knew they might want to harm it, thinking they were protecting themselves. But he also knew that fear could be overcome with courage, that understanding could replace ignorance, and that kindness could teach lessons that words alone could not. Jack was ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that the journey to help the creature and to help the town see the truth would not be easy. But he also knew it was worth it. For the first time, Jack felt a deep sense of purpose. This was not just about saving a creature trapped in the canyon. It was about showing that fear often hides the truth, that courage and empathy can change lives, and that one person's determination could make a difference. The creature, lying quietly beside him, seemed to sense this too. There was a silent understanding, a bond forming in the darkness of the canyon that would grow stronger with each passing day. As the stars shone above, Jack whispered softly to the creature, "We'll face whatever comes together. You don't have to be alone anymore." The creature shifted slightly, leaning closer, a sign of trust that filled Jack with hope. He knew that the road ahead would be full of challenges: the town's fear, the misunderstanding of others, and the dangers of the wild. But for the first time he felt confident that together they could overcome anything. The night ended with a quiet promise. Courage, compassion, and understanding would guide their path, and the true story of the monster was only just beginning. Word spread faster than Jack could have imagined. By the next morning, whispers had begun in the town. Some people claimed they had seen strange tracks near the outskirts. Others said they had spotted shadows moving in the canyon at night. Rumors traveled quickly, each retelling adding a new layer of fear. By the afternoon, the story of the monster had reached every home, every shop, and every street corner. Fear turned to suspicion, and suspicion soon became anger. The townspeople were convinced that Jack had been foolish, or worse, reckless. Many people gathered near the town center, voices raised, eyes filled with worry and frustration. Some accused Jack of putting everyone at risk. "It's a monster!" one man shouted, pointing toward the distant canyon. "It will come down here and destroy everything!" Knows what it will do next. Others nodded vigorously, their faces pale and tense. Mothers called their children inside, and fathers shook their heads in disbelief. Everyone had a story, and every story was more terrifying than the last. The fear that had been whispered in quiet tones now erupted like wildfire, and Jack found himself at the center of it. Jack stood calmly, listening to the heated arguments, his eyes steady but filled with concern. He knew that people were scared, and fear could make them see things in ways that were not true. But he also knew that fear could be changed by understanding. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. "I know you're scared," he said, his voice calm and measured. "But I have seen this creature, and it is not the monster you think it is. It is hurt, it is frightened, and it is not dangerous unless you make it feel threatened. We can't judge it by the stories we tell each other. We have to see the truth for ourselves." Some people looked skeptical, others angry, and a few were curious. But the majority shook their heads, unwilling to believe him. Fear had a strong hold, and it was difficult to see past it. "You expect us to just trust you?" another man said, his voice sharp. "We have heard what it has done to our livestock, to our fences. How do we know it won't attack us?" The town's anger was mounting, and their fear had turned into a demand. The creature must be hunted, captured, or killed. Anything else was considered dangerous and irresponsible. Jack felt the weight of the town's fear pressing on him. He knew he could not force them to understand, but he also knew he could not abandon the creature. It had done nothing wrong. Its only crime had been surviving in a world that misunderstood it. He tried again, speaking more urgently, but still calmly. "You are judging it without knowing the facts," he said. "I have seen it.
I have been with it. It is not a threat.
It only wants to live, just like we do. If we go to it with fear and anger, we will only make it defensive. But if we approach it with care and understanding, we can coexist." Some townspeople muttered among themselves, but their fear was loud, and their doubts louder. They could not see past the stories they had told each other for years. They could not believe that a creature so large, so strange, could be anything other than a danger. The whispers of danger had grown into a roar, and Jack found himself feeling a mixture of frustration and determination. He knew that changing minds would not happen quickly, but he also knew that giving up was not an option. The creature's life, and perhaps the chance to teach the town something important, depended on him. By mid-afternoon, a small group of people decided to confront Jack directly. They rode out to the edge of the canyon, armed with ropes, sticks, and tools meant to defend themselves if needed. Jack met them calmly, dismounting his horse and motioned for them to wait. "I understand your fear," he said, "but aggression will not help anyone. The creature is intelligent. It understands danger. If you approach it with hostility, it will only respond defensively. Let me show you a different way." Some hesitated, unsure whether to trust Jack or give in to their instincts. But curiosity got the better of a few. Jack led them carefully into the canyon, making sure the creature could see him and recognize that these newcomers were not threats. The creature lifted its massive head, watching the humans with wide, cautious eyes. It did not growl or charge. It simply observed, evaluating the situation. Jack motioned for the townspeople to stay calm, speaking softly as they watched the massive being in awe. For the first time, some people began to see that Jack had been telling the truth. The creature was enormous, yes, but its movements were cautious and deliberate. It did not roar or attack. It did not lunge at anyone. Instead, it remained still, its large eyes watching every person carefully, as though judging whether they could be trusted. The townspeople felt a mixture of fear, amazement, and guilt. They realized that the stories they had repeated for years might have been exaggerated, and that the creature was not the monster they had imagined. Jack took a step closer, speaking to both the creature and the people. "This is what I have been trying to tell you," he said. "It is not evil. It is scared, just like we would be if we were trapped or hurt. It only needs patience, understanding, and care." One woman in the group whispered to her neighbor, "I think he's right.
It's not attacking us, it's
like it's afraid of us." Others nodded slowly, their fear giving way to curiosity. Some even took small steps forward, reaching out tentatively, wanting to see the creature up close but still unsure of what to expect. Jack smiled, sensing that the first cracks in the wall of fear were appearing. He knew it would take time, but this moment was important. It was the start of change. The town could see that the creature was not a mindless monster, but a living being capable of thought and emotion. They could understand, if only slowly, that fear should not dictate their actions. Jack also knew that this trust had to be earned carefully, step by step. One wrong move, one moment of aggression, and fear could return in full force. As the group stayed with him in the canyon, Jack explained more about the creature's life and habits. He described how it had survived the harsh conditions, how it had been trapped by careless humans before, and how it had learned to protect itself. He showed them the marks of injuries, the signs of struggle, and the intelligence in its eyes. He explained that every action the creature took was not an attack, but a response to the world it lived in, a world that had misunderstood and feared it. By the evening, some townspeople began to understand. They spoke quietly among themselves, realizing that they had been too quick to judge. They began to see that courage, not fear, was needed to approach the unknown. Jack encouraged them to observe the creature with respect, to recognize that it had a right to live and to be free. Slowly, the anger that had gripped the town began to fade, replaced by wonder, curiosity, and a small spark of hope. Even though not everyone was convinced, Jack felt that progress had been made. He had shown some of the townspeople that fear was not always truth, that courage could reveal understanding, and that empathy could overcome years of ignorance. The creature, lying quietly near him, seemed to sense the shift in the human's attitude. Its eyes followed the people, watching carefully but without hostility. For the first time, the canyon felt calmer, the tension less sharp. Jack knew that this was only the beginning. Changing an entire town's perception would take patience, determination, and continued care. Fear was powerful, but he believed that kindness, courage, and truth could overcome it. He also knew that the creature depended on him. Its trust in him and its survival rested on his willingness to stand firm in the face of doubt and fear. He resolved that he would continue to protect it, continue to teach the town, and continue to show that the stories of monsters were often just stories, and that real understanding came from seeing with one's own eyes and one's own heart. That night, as Jack returned to the creature's safe spot in the canyon, he thought about the town and their reactions. He knew they were scared, but he also knew they were capable of learning. Courage, after all, was contagious. When one person dared to do what was right, it inspired others to follow. And in that quiet canyon, under the star-filled sky, Jack felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. He had not only freed a misunderstood creature, but he had also begun the long journey of teaching a town the meaning of compassion, patience, and humanity. The canyon had become Jack's new home, at least for the days he spent with the creature. Every morning he rose before the sun, the air crisp and quiet, carrying the soft scent of earth and wild grass. Rusty padded beside him as they made their way to the creature's safe area, checking carefully that everything was secure. Jack had built a small shelter out of rocks and fallen branches, a place where the creature could rest without fear of attack. He had also prepared food and water, knowing that nourishment would help it regain strength after its days of struggle. Jack knew that this was more than just caring for an injured creature. It was a test of patience, courage, and empathy. The townspeople still feared the monster, and he understood why. They had only known fear in stories, not truth, but he also knew that if he could show them another way, through patience, through action, through understanding, they might learn something valuable. They might see that fear often hides the truth, and that kindness can change hearts. The creature had begun to recognize Jack, and over time, its initial fear started to fade. At first, it would flinch at sudden movements, or move just a little away whenever Jack came near. But slowly, as he spoke softly, fed it carefully, and avoided any sudden gestures, it began to relax. Its massive eyes would follow him calmly, and it started to accept his touch. Jack was amazed by its intelligence, how it seemed to understand his intentions, how it could read subtle changes in his voice and movements. Each day, the trust between them grew stronger, forming a bond that was quiet, patient, and profound. One afternoon, Jack noticed the creature limping slightly. Its left leg had a deep scratch, likely from a previous trap or a fight it had barely survived. Without hesitation, Jack gathered water, clean cloth, and herbs he knew could help prevent infection. He spoke softly as he cleaned the wound, careful not to startle it. The creature stayed surprisingly still, watching him with wide eyes, as if it understood that this human meant no harm. Jack wrapped the injury gently and offered some food as a reward. The creature ate slowly, then nudged his hand in what seemed like gratitude. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. This was proof that patience and care could replace fear, and that trust could be built even between the most unlikely beings. As days passed, the canyon felt less like a place of danger and more like a sanctuary. Jack would spend hours observing the creature, learning its habits, understanding its likes and dislikes. He noticed that it had a fondness for quiet corners, for soft patches of grass where it could rest, and for small streams where it could drink and cool itself. He also observed its intelligence, how it solved problems, how it avoided dangers, and how it seemed to anticipate Jack's movements. Jack realized that this was no ordinary animal. It was a being capable of thought, emotion, and understanding. Jack knew that the town could never see this from afar. They had to witness it themselves, and carefully, slowly, he began to prepare for that moment. He started inviting small groups of curious townspeople to the canyon, letting them see the creature from a safe distance. At first, the groups were hesitant, their eyes wide with fear, hands gripping whatever tools they had brought for protection. But Jack guided them gently, speaking calmly about what to expect. "It is not a monster," he would say. "It is intelligent and cautious. If you approach it quietly and respectfully, it will not harm you." The first few visitors were skeptical, their fear making it difficult to believe what they saw. But as they observed the creature's gentle behavior, their expressions began to change. Children laughed quietly as the creature allowed them to watch it drink from the stream. Adults whispered among themselves, realizing that what they had feared was not dangerous at all. Some even dared to step closer, marveling at the creature's size and intelligence. Jack watched, quietly proud, knowing that these small moments of understanding could slowly transform the town's perception. Despite this progress, there were still challenges. Not everyone was willing to accept the truth so easily. Some townspeople insisted that the creature was dangerous, that Jack was reckless, and that they should act to protect themselves. Jack had to stand firm, explaining patiently, showing through his actions rather than words, that the creature was harmless. He taught the visitors to move slowly, to avoid sudden gestures, and to speak softly. Over time, even the most fearful began to see what he had known all along. Fear often distorts reality, while courage and empathy reveal the truth. One evening, as the sun set behind the canyon walls, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jack sat quietly beside the creature. Rusty lay at his feet, and the wind whispered softly through the grass. Jack reflected on how far they had come. Just days before, the creature had been trapped, alone and in pain. Now it was learning to trust, to relax, and to feel safe. And the town, though still wary, was beginning to glimpse a new reality. People were learning to see beyond fear, to understand that courage and compassion could replace suspicion and anger. Jack decided to take a bold step. He led the creature to a small clearing near the edge of the canyon, where a few townspeople had gathered under his careful guidance. The creature, trusting Jack completely by now, followed calmly. When the townspeople saw it fully in the light of day, their breath caught. It was massive, powerful, yet calm and intelligent. It did not move aggressively or roar. Instead, it simply observed, its large eyes taking in the humans before it. Children stared in awe, and even the adults found themselves speechless. Jack stepped forward, speaking softly to the creature and the people. "This is what I wanted you to see," he said. "It is not a monster. It is a living being, just like us. It wants to live, to survive, to feel safe. If we approach it with fear and anger, it will respond defensively. But if we show patience and care, it will respond with trust and respect. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to do what is right despite fear." The townspeople remained quiet, watching the creature as it shifted slightly, lowering its massive head to the ground. A few children stepped closer, curious and unafraid, and the creature did not move. Some adults hesitated, but eventually they too took small steps forward. Whispers of amazement filled the air, and Jack realized that a transformation had begun. The town was starting to see what he had always known. The so-called monster was not evil, but misunderstood. Their fear had been replaced, slowly but surely, with wonder and respect. Over the following days, Jack continued to care for the creature and to guide the townspeople. He taught them how to observe without judgment, how to approach with calm and patience, and how to recognize intelligence and emotion in beings different from themselves. The canyon, once a place of fear and mystery, became a place of learning, understanding, and connection. Jack saw families sitting quietly near the creature, children laughing softly as it allowed them to watch, and adults marveling at its strength and intelligence. Jack also noticed the creature's behavior changing. It began to show signs of curiosity and playfulness, exploring the canyon more freely, interacting with Rusty, and even responding to Jack's gestures with small, intelligent movements. The bond between Jack and the creature had grown strong, built on trust, patience, and respect. He realized that this relationship was not just about survival. It was about understanding, empathy, and the quiet power of courage. By the end of the week, Jack had accomplished more than he had imagined possible. The creature was stronger, healthier, and more confident. The town, though still cautious, had begun to see the truth. Fear can blind, but courage can open eyes. Jack felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his efforts had begun to change not only the creature's life, but also the hearts and minds of the people around him. He had shown them that understanding, compassion, and courage were stronger than fear, and that even the most frightening challenges could be met with care and patience. As night fell over the canyon, Jack sat beside the creature, Rusty curled up at his feet. The stars sparkled overhead, and the wind whispered softly through the cliffs. Jack knew that challenges still lay ahead. The town's full acceptance would take time, and danger could always return. But he also knew that he had taken the most important steps. He had saved a misunderstood being, taught lessons of courage and compassion, and begun a transformation that could last for generations. For the first time, Jack felt a deep, quiet pride. He had acted not out of fear or desire for recognition, but out of understanding, kindness, and bravery. He had shown that courage is not always loud or grand. It is often quiet, patient, and persistent. And in that quiet canyon, beneath the vast, star-filled sky, Jack and the creature rested together, a bond unbroken, a story just beginning, and a town slowly learning the true meaning of humanity. By the time the fifth day arrived, the canyon had begun to feel less like a place of fear and more like a place of connection. The townspeople, though cautious, were now willing to visit under Jack's guidance. Families, children, and a few brave adults ventured slowly into the canyon, each step careful but filled with curiosity. They approached not with weapons or suspicion, but with open eyes, ready to see the truth that Jack had been trying to show them all along. Jack walked among them calmly, Rusty trotting beside him, guiding the townspeople to a safe distance from the creature. The massive being watched quietly, its eyes intelligent and aware, yet calm. It had grown stronger over the past days, its fur glistening slightly in the morning light, muscles rippling beneath its thick coat. Though enormous and powerful, it did not move aggressively or threaten anyone. It simply observed, and that observation carried a quiet lesson. Understanding comes from patience, not fear. Children were the first to approach. Their small hands reached out slowly, curiosity shining in their eyes, while the creature lowered its head to meet them at their level. It sniffed gently, careful, cautious, yet accepting their presence. A soft laugh broke the tension as one child touched its fur for the first time. Others followed, their initial hesitation replaced by wonder. Parents watched, hearts pounding with a mix of relief and awe, seeing that what they had feared was not a monster, but a being capable of gentleness and trust. Jack stood back, observing quietly. He knew that trust could be fragile. One sudden movement, one loud noise, and the fragile peace could vanish. But for now the bond held. The creature's movements were slow, deliberate, and calm, responding to the presence of humans with intelligence and restraint. Jack smiled to himself. These small steps mattered. Courage was contagious, and patience was proving stronger than fear. Word spread quickly throughout the town about what they had seen in the canyon. More townspeople came, not to hunt or drive away the monster, but to witness the truth with their own eyes. They saw the creature drinking from a stream without aggression, watching birds flit across the cliffs without chasing them, and responding to Jack's gestures with surprising understanding. Conversations turned from fear to wonder. People spoke softly to each other about what they were seeing, realizing that their previous beliefs had been shaped by stories and rumors, not reality. Jack decided it was time to teach the town another lesson. He gathered a group of people and showed them how to approach the creature safely and respectfully. Speak softly, he instructed. Move slowly. Don't make sudden movements. Let it understand that you mean no harm. The townspeople followed his guidance carefully. To their amazement, the creature responded positively. It allowed them to get closer, to observe, even to touch gently. It had begun to trust them, just as it had trusted Jack. The transformation was subtle, but powerful. Fear began to dissolve, replaced by curiosity, empathy, and respect. People who had once feared the canyon now walked among its shadows with wonder, learning to see the world in a different way. They began to understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. And they realized that understanding and compassion could create bonds that fear and suspicion could never form. Jack watched quietly as the town slowly embraced this new understanding. Families lingered in the canyon, children laughed softly, and adults whispered in amazement at the creature's intelligence and gentleness. He saw the change in their faces, the softening of their eyes, the shift from fear to acceptance. This was more than he had hoped for. His efforts to protect the creature and to teach the town the value of courage and empathy were succeeding. Over the next few days, the creature became more comfortable in its surroundings. It explored the canyon with confidence, moving freely, yet always aware of Jack and Rusty nearby. Jack continued to care for it, bringing food, water, and tending to minor injuries. He spoke softly to it, sharing quiet moments of trust and companionship. The bond between them had grown deep, built on patience, respect, and understanding. Jack knew that this relationship had changed him as well. He felt a quiet sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had made a difference not only for the creature, but also for the town. The townspeople began to contribute in small ways. Some brought extra food, careful not to startle the creature. Others helped repair fences and paths in the canyon, ensuring that the creature had safe areas to explore. Children made soft toys from scraps of cloth, leaving them at a safe distance for the creature to investigate. Each act, though small, reinforced the lesson that kindness and understanding could overcome fear. Jack watched with pride as the town learned to care for something once considered a threat, realizing that courage, patience, and empathy could ripple outward in ways he had never imagined. One morning, Jack led the creature to a wide-open meadow near the edge of the canyon. The sun shone brightly, warming the grass and illuminating the creature's thick fur. It moved gracefully, strong and free, its powerful legs carrying it across the meadow with confidence. The townspeople watched from a safe distance, their expressions filled with awe and amazement. They had once whispered fearful tales of destruction and danger, but now they saw something entirely different, a being alive, intelligent, and full of spirit. Jack knelt on the ground, resting his hand gently on the creature's side. "You're safe now," he said softly. "You can be free and no one will hurt you. You've earned this." The creature looked at him, eyes wide and alert, then nudged his hand gently, as if to say thank you. Rusty barked softly, circling the creature in excitement. Jack realized that this moment was more than a farewell. It was a celebration of trust, of courage, and of understanding. The creature had survived, and the town had learned that fear can blind, but courage and empathy can open eyes. By the end of that day, the town had been transformed. The canyon was no longer a place of fear, but a place of learning and connection. People spoke of the creature with respect rather than terror. Children played near the streams, laughing softly as the creature moved gracefully nearby. Adults shared stories not of danger, but of understanding and trust. Jack had shown them that fear is not always truth, and that one person's courage can inspire an entire community. As night fell, Jack sat quietly in the canyon, Rusty curled at his feet, and the creature resting nearby. The stars twinkled above, casting soft light across the canyon walls. Jack reflected on everything that had happened, the initial fear, the rumors, the townspeople's anger, and the slow, careful work of building trust. He realized that this journey had been about more than saving a creature. It had been about showing the town and himself the power of patience, courage, and empathy. He thought about the stories that had filled the town before, stories of monsters and danger. Now, those stories were changing. They would be told not as tales of fear, but as lessons of understanding. Children would grow up learning that courage is standing up for what is right, that empathy can create bonds, and that the unknown is not always to be feared. Jack had not only saved a misunderstood creature, but he had also given the town a gift far greater than they had realized, the chance to see the world through eyes of understanding rather than fear. The creature stood and stretched, powerful muscles rippling under its thick coat. It looked around the canyon, then back at Jack, as if acknowledging the bond they shared. Jack smiled, knowing that it would always remember his kindness, and that he would always remember the lessons it had taught him. Rusty barked happily, running circles around them, and Jack laughed quietly, feeling a deep sense of peace. In the days that followed, the creature continued to roam freely, exploring the canyon and the nearby meadows. Jack visited daily, bringing food and water, but giving it the freedom to live as it chose. The townspeople continued to watch from a distance, learning patience and respect as they observed the creature. Slowly, the stories of monsters were replaced with stories of courage, kindness, and understanding. The town had learned that fear is powerful, but empathy is stronger. Jack never sought recognition or praise. He lived quietly on the edge of the town, caring for his animals and tending to the canyon. But he knew that his actions had changed lives, not just the creatures, but the lives of the people in the town. They had seen the truth for themselves and had learned an important lesson: that every living being deserves understanding, that courage means doing what is right even when it is difficult, and that one person's kindness can transform a community. And so, the legend of the monster changed forever. It was no longer a tale of fear, but a story of hope, courage, and compassion. People would speak of Jack the Cowboy, who had saved a misunderstood being, and of the creature who had taught a town what humanity truly means. The canyon, once dark and silent, was now filled with life, laughter, and understanding. Jack watched quietly from a distance, Rusty by his side, smiling softly. He knew that the real story was not about monsters, but about courage, empathy, and the quiet, steady power of doing what is right.